pair of shoes and conquer the world. A 5-year-old girl, a regular visitor, and a mother. This little girl dreads the days that her physical therapist, Janet, comes to visit. Here comes Janet, walking up the steps to the house, a little girl's heart beating out of her chest with a scowl on her face. The time to start stretching had begun. The little girl just hoped with all of her might that today just wouldn't be the day that they do the L stretch. To have your legs in an impossible position for a 5-year-old, the L stretch. To have one leg straight, held on the ground, while the other is held straight and raised to a 90-degree angle. Who knew that a little girl could scream so much? Screaming for her mommy to just come and take her pain away. That little girl was me, at the start of my journey with cerebral palsy. So, what is cerebral palsy? Do you know? Are there multiple types of cerebral palsy? If so, does each type affect a person differently, depending on which type they have? Well, by the end of this speech, you should be able to answer those questions and spread awareness about this disorder that is causing so much pain throughout the world. When I'm done telling you the basic information about cerebral palsy, I'm going to share with you my personal journey with the disorder. Every struggle tells a story. This one begins with 2 not-so-simple words, cerebral palsy. So what is cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy, often what people call cerebral palsy, or CP, is a brain injury that most commonly occurs during or shortly after birth. Even though this disorder is generalized as a disorder that affects the muscles in a person's body, it varies depending on the type of the specific person that has the disorder, and it varies depending on person to person and what type they have. So, there are 3 main types of cerebral palsy: quadriplegia, hemiplegia, and diplegia. If someone were to come up to you and say, "I have quadriplegic cerebral palsy," that means that their specific type of cerebral palsy that they have affects all 4 of their limbs. Hence, quad meaning 4. Hemiplegia means that a person's specific type only affects one hemisphere of their body or one hemisphere more than the other. Are you seeing the pattern yet? Diplegia means that a person's specific type affects their legs only or their legs more than their arms. So, even though a person can have quadriplegia, hemiplegia, or diplegia, and they're very different because of what muscles they affect, a person can also experience a mixture of certain types, whether it's hemiplegia and diplegia, or vice versa. So, as an addition to having hemiplegia, diplegia, or quadriplegia, there is also one more thing to take in consideration. There's another thing that I like to call the secondary classifications that tells more information about how a person is diagnosed and how the disorder affects that specific person. So, the secondary classifications, what are they? I like to call them secondary classifications because that helps me understand them. Well, these secondary classifications include spasticity, spastic cerebral palsy, dyskinetic cerebral palsy, or ataxic cerebral palsy. Spastic cerebral palsy, the most common type, means that a person's muscles are tight and stiff when they have this specific type of cerebral palsy. When you have spasticity, small movements, everyday movements, can be very painful, difficult, and uncomfortable. Now, dyskinetic and ataxic, on the other hand, although not as common, mean kind of the same thing. Now, even though they affect the same percentage of people, they still have slight differences between the two. Dyskinetic is when a person experiences involuntary movements that they cannot control. Ataxic, on the other hand, means that a person experiences shaky movements that often cause them to become imbalanced. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the three main types, when you have spastic, dyskinetic, or ataxic, you can also experience a mix of multiple types, like I mentioned earlier with the three main types. Even though there is no cure for cerebral palsy, people with all of the types of CP often find resources that can help better their quality of life. Some medical devices that may help include braces, walkers, crutches, or wheelchairs. Now, physical therapy, stretches, and meds can also be used to ease the discomfort and better a person's quality of life if they choose to have these things to help them, or if they are able to. Now, if you're looking for a more inexpensive option, you can have heating packs, essential oils, or at-home stretches may be the way to go for you. I have personally used all of the mentioned resources in my journey with cerebral palsy to help better my personal quality of life. But it might not be the way to go for you, and that's okay. You just have to find what works for you. Now, 11:32 a.m. on April 15th, 2002. A 2-pound, 14-ounce baby girl was born with a brain injury no one knew about. This disorder went undiagnosed for 2 years until a doctor finally chose to listen to a rightfully so concerned mother, instead of just waving her off and saying, "Your daughter's lazy. She doesn't want to walk, or talk, or crawl." Now, this is my story. These are the doctors who diagnosed me with cerebral palsy when I was 2 years old, and still treat me today, 14 years later, at the age of 16. These doctors diagnosed me with spastic cerebral palsy with a mix of hemiplegia and diplegia, meaning that my left side is more affected than my right, and my left side is harder for me to move, and my legs are more affected than my arms in this particular case. My feet are the most affected when it comes to my specific type of cerebral palsy. My mobility in my feet are limited, even though I am able to walk with the help of my handy-dandy braces and my crutch. Now, the doctors at Shriners Children's Hospital in St. Louis, Missouri, have been with me through my whole journey with cerebral palsy. Through the pain, the sleepless nights, the endless amount of tears, my doctors and my family have been with me through it all. Marilyn Monroe once said, "Give a girl the right pair of shoes, and she can conquer the world." This quote really resonates with me because I always think back to that little 5-year-old girl and that newborn baby girl who ended up screaming because she had to do her stretches and just wanted her mommy to take her pain away. Now, just because I have the disorder called CP doesn't mean it limits me. cerebral palsy is causing pain all over the world. 8,000 babies or more every year are born with cerebral palsy, whether or not it's diagnosed at birth. Well, it all starts with the diagnosis, whether it's quadriplegic cerebral palsy, spastic cerebral palsy, whatever it may be. But it all starts there. And then the doctors inform the parents or the patient what cerebral palsy is, what specific type they have, and you go from there. Now, this might sound odd to you because you have heard a short amount of my story, but I wouldn't take back my diagnosis of cerebral palsy for anything. Even though it's hard and painful, it might sound funny, but cerebral palsy has bettered my quality of life in many ways. It's just me. But I guess I must have the right pair of shoes.